beautiful part of my week. InGoal Radio, the podcast, presented by the Hockey Shop, source for Sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. We got some exciting stuff coming up. Saw some videos coming out from the boys over at the Hockey Shop. And Tendy Fest is around the corner. We'll circle back to that in just a little bit. We're into the third round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I think we're still waiting for a goaltender to grab hold of best goaltender of the tournament. I just invented that award. What are we seeing from the net miners in the Final Four? Woody and Hutch.
I'll go first because I got the fancy numbers.
Ooh,
how's that sound?
That's really good.
You know what we're seeing? We're seeing guys rise to the occasion as the playoffs have gone on. And to be honest, I get my back up a little bit in some of my other hits because guys will have like a 3-game heater late in the second round going into the conference finals. And all of a sudden they are the second coming. They are, clutch, they are postseason this, they are playoff that. And I look at the numbers and it's like, yeah, but they were down in the series because they were very much not. They're like 4 goals below expected in 3 games before the heater. At the end of the day, the value of sticking with what you do, not chasing things when it goes wrong, and being able to get back to your game matters. Maybe that's what it is. So Jake Ottinger had a very average first round of the playoffs. To be honest, statistically speaking, behind a great Dallas Stars defense, he had a very league average regular season, slightly below, in fact, and has had a couple of them. But in the second round of the playoffs, he was the best goalie by far. And he had another game in game 1 where by the numbers, he finishes below expected. But after falling behind, he just sticks to what he does. It's all calm. And the Oilers create some scrambles and some flurries, and Jake stays in position and pucks hit him and he makes saves. And then they storm back in the third period. And it's kind of the same with Bob. Like in Toronto series, he wasn't great early, but he was spectacular down the stretch when it mattered. He gets them through to the conference final. And I'm not sure he had to piss a drop in game 1 while Freddie Anderson was under siege at the other end. But when he needs to, he comes up with those saves. So maybe after all the fancy maths and all the analytics, maybe it's just about timely saves in big moments when we get to playoff time.
That kind of language is unsuitable for our podcast, and we apologize to all the parents who are listening. Don't we, Hutch?
Oh, I can fix it. The parents probably will never even hear it, but just assume that Woody said something he didn't want to. He just gets so excited about his goaltending.
There's no urination on this podcast.
I'm just enjoying the drama. I'm enjoying the storylines. I am loving that we've got 4 guys who get the job done, but all in a very different way. So it's entertaining as a coach, as a parent, as a fan to see how they're each playing the game differently. I've renewed my fandom for watching Bob play the game. I just think it's
so good, isn't it?
Way to play the game, yeah. Beautiful way to play the game.
I like hearing mobility. That because I'm the same way, and
good.
I've never really noticed it before, but the last 2 years, I'm like, every chance I get to see him now, I dive in.
An aesthetically pleasing goaltender.
Yes, goalie porn.
Yeah.
And there's no
careful with your words.
There's no. Yeah, what are we doing here today, Woody? There's no like extra emotion involved. He has unique approaches to the position, but he still looks so much like I would want to look.
Yes.
I don't look like that, but I would want to look like that.
My legs would fall off if I tried to look like that. Yeah. And actually, to your point, Darren, can't you say the same thing about Jake? Right? Yeah. Like his level, his emotional level never changes no matter what's going on around him. You see it in the post-game interviews, and maybe for all the attention that technique and tactics and how to beat them and how to score and what they're good at and what they're not that comes with the Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe none of it matters. It's just all about being able to stick with it through the highs and the lows and maintain a consistent level.
What I'm not enjoying is the number of fly-by elbows. Whoops, I just fell on the goaltender. I think it's up more this year than ever. I hate that the vast majority of it just reaches that line where, especially in the playoffs, they don't want to call a penalty, but the sum of it is just too much. Obviously, we don't know what's being said on the ice, but I'd love it if an official would just go to the teams and say, okay, you've had your one, and I don't care how soft it is, the next one's getting called. We got to protect these guys.
Some is accidental contact.
Some,
Yeah.
but I'm sorry. Two of the most prominent ones are not, Darren. Like Bennett leans in, and then against Bobrovsky the other night, that's a lean in right into the head. You see it there, you lean into it, you make contact, you clip the side of the head. Definition of a vulnerable position is a goalie on his knees. I'm sorry. And this crease in, like, and both guys are in or near the edge of the crease. Like, and this is where the lack of goalie interference calls throughout the regular season, because, oh, don't worry, guys, we would have reviewed it if it went in and it wouldn't have counted, is piling up. And you've seen 3 goalies get hurt, and the Panthers were probably lucky that Bob didn't get hurt the other night, because that was a pretty good one by the side of the head that he took.
Yeah, and I didn't see anybody selling on those.
No. And
So
that's where the goalie union doesn't do itself any favors, is the guys that throw the head back at the slightest contact, and
Right.
that puts the referees in a tough position.
What did you make of Connor Hellebuck's comments in his year-end media availability when he said, I don't want to be tweaking as I go along. I got to put more faith in my game. And he was referring to the first-round series against the St. Louis Blues, and how he admittedly found his game by just exhaling and getting back to the foundation in the second round and performed much better. But he came clean and said, I was chasing my game in the first round. I found it refreshing to hear Connor, who's so steadfastly confident in everything he does, to hear him admit that he maybe stepped out of his foundation a little bit.
I think it's refreshing to hear anybody say something that's not just that standard hockey answer that people feel you have to give. A little bit of emotion, a little bit of open book. That is refreshing. I think one thing that many of us thought watching Connor in the playoffs was that there were times that he seemed to be, I'm almost going to say guessing. You know, he thinks the game at such a high level. He prides himself in his ability to think the game at a high level. It seemed that when the chips were down, he was relying on that thinking a little bit too much. And what you're referring to there, Darren, was what we've heard from so many coaches, that we can learn all these things in practice. We can work on all these things in practice. But when the game comes, you have to step on the ice and just let it go and play. And I think maybe that was something he was realizing as he was playing.
Fine line between great reads and anticipation and going a little bit early. And certainly there were times I thought in the playoffs where he went a little bit early, expecting something to happen that didn't happen. And you know the teams are looking for that. Like, they're trying to create deception. I mean, look at the Granlund goal. Never looks at the net on the 2-on-1, like not once before delivering that shot. I find it interesting. Like, he's being praised for being introspective about the first round last year. And the introspection is, I need to stick to my game, and an admission that maybe there were parts that changed. Last year, he got ripped mercilessly in that market, especially for saying, my game is fine, I just need to stick with it. Like, he basically said, there's nothing wrong with my game, I just need to stick with it. And so, kind of ironic that it comes back to sort of trusting his foundation, but the way he said it last year after a first round exit versus the way he said it this year after getting through the first round.
I never thought of it that way. But
Treated a little differently. But this, after getting through the first round, he did. What didn't happen was the Jets didn't find their game. Connor Hellebuck's adjusted save percentage in the second round, and it's a tiny sample, was better than his regular season adjusted save percentage. And nobody could tell because his environment deteriorated by 31 points. So it was 903 in the regular season, which is really high. And it was 872, I believe, in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, 865 on the road. We did an article at InGoal about sort of home versus road and the narrative around it and how much of it is Connor and how much of it is team. Like, they were unable to do the things they did in the regular season in the playoffs. And so it got a lot tougher. His expected save percentage, so then what the average goalie would stop facing that quality of chance, deteriorated. And his performance relative to it was actually slightly better than it was in the regular season. And they're getting ready to give him a third Vezina, and probably, from what I'm hearing from voters, a Hart Trophy for it. So it really is interesting how so much of the narrative, because even in the second round, I saw the criticism, obviously road woes, but about the overall performance. And the overall performance in the second round was better than what he did in the regular season. And we're about to hand him a bunch of hardware for it. So understanding that nothing exists in a vacuum when you're a goaltender and environment matters is a part of this discussion that I think, and if I'm honest, it gets missed on both ends. Not just the criticism of the second round, but the praise for the regular season. Like, that was a really good defensive environment.
Let's slide over to our parent segment. We're going to change things up, the order a little bit, just to keep everybody honest. You can't just go through life doing the same thing.
Oh, I was cheating on my reads, Darren.
I know you were. I could tell you were all ready. You were grabbing it. So I'm going to make an audible here. The Stop It Goaltending You, the app parent segment with Hutch, but it's Woody with the explanation of Stop It Goaltending You, the app, and how you can benefit from it.
Success starts with discipline, boys. Maybe that's why I've had so little of it in my life. Success starts with discipline. That is the topic this week in the 5 1-minute primers from Brian DeCourt in the Stop It Goaltending You app. And this is your reminder that every subscription to the Stop It Goaltending You app gets you 5 new videos every week from DeCourt. They're called daily primers. They're just quick hits to help you become a better goaltender. If you don't want to invest too much time, get up in the morning, watch a 1-minute video. You'll be better for it, from a guy who spent over 25 years at Stop It Goaltending You, building that goalie mecca of instruction, but also in the NHL as a goalie coach, as a director of goaltending, as a goalie scout. So you get that advice in a quick hit format. Also this week, goalie systems, they're going to take a look at low slot line plays with video and a drill of the week on backdoor quick transition. So all of that this week at the Stop It Goaltending You app. Just a sample of what you get every week with the Stop It Goaltending You, the app. And, of course, a subscription to InGoal Magazine Premium. So in addition to all their great content, you get all our great content, which is normally behind a paywall at ingoalmag.com. The best of both worlds in goaltending. Stop It Goaltending You, the app, and InGoal Magazine. Make sure you check it out on the App Store or wherever you get Android apps. I don't know because I'm not an Android user, but find it there.
You know, when we started this podcast way back when, there was a couple of elements in the program. And slowly it's evolved to have a bunch of different sections. And the parent segment is one of my favorite adds to this wonderful offering through the eyes of Hutch and through the interaction of parents out there.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. But this time, it's not so much through the eyes of Hutch. We changed things up this week a little bit with our feature guest, Dan Stewart, who is the development coach for the St. Louis Blues. And Woody and I did the interview together. I've known Dan for quite some time and thought it would be great to hop in on it. And very organically, one question came up from me that, in retrospect, stood on its own as a really great parent segment. And I was tempted to hang on to it for one of those weeks when I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I could parachute Dan in for the parent segment, but we decided this one's too good. We're just going to bring it out right away. It's a really powerful suggestion for parents, whether you're experienced or not. And I'll warn you, if you're not experienced as a goalie parent or as a goaltender, the beginning of it can sound a little intimidating, but hang in there and you'll get the piece that's there for all of us. It's a deep dive into something we hear almost universally from our guests, and that's that kids don't watch enough hockey. So we're just going to roll it here. We're going to let Dan talk to you about how we as parents can help our kids learn to read the game better. Now, if I put my goalie parent hat on, how do I help my young goaltender learn to read the game? Especially if they don't have that support in their team like you're able to give your goaltenders.
The biggest thing to me today is the kids don't watch enough hockey. Like, they watch highlights, and they watch this, really boiled down version of events, and they just focus on what's cool or whatever too often. I'm not saying all of them, but I would love to see kids watch hockey. And if you're watching it with them, I would be like, hey, watch through the neutral zone here, right? Tell me the numbers of the rush as it's coming in. If you were playing that, what would you be thinking? What would you be looking for? What would be your keys in terms of the things you work with your goalie coach on? If there's a power play scenario and they've got a setup and they've got a 1-3-1 set up against, say, a diamond, let's say, right? I would say to the goalie, look how this setup is. Look where the puck is likely to go next, right? Look how the goalie reacts to it. Now look how this other goalie reacts to it. And then again, ask the same question, like, in this scenario, what would you be doing? What would your goalie coach say you do, right? And that helps also get an idea of what the goalie coach is actually doing with your son or daughter as well.
And that questioning, you can do that as a parent without being a goalie coach.
100%. You're just asking questions, and you don't need to give any response to the answers at all, right? Even if my stepson is a 21-year-old goalie, and if we were watching hockey or whatever, I wouldn't comment on his answers to that stuff, right? And I'm a goalie coach, but I have the call. Okay, that's cool.
Kind of reflects on what you talked about with your video sessions, how much less talking you do now and more just asking them.
Yeah. Well, I certainly try.
Kevin does too.
I don't try. I just talk all the time.
Wow. Look at you. You're like late night talk show, bringing clips along with you. Nicely done.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's in this clip, Darren, but we'll just the studio sent something along.
Exactly. Set this clip up. I'm not sure what it is, but okay, just roll it.
Yeah. I'm definitely never going to be the star on the talk show, that's for sure. But it's fun to pretend like we do.
So what's your takeaway from what we just heard?
Well,
what I loved
need to add
about
one. I'm sorry, Woody's going to hop in because as he is wont to do. Darren's laughing his ass off right now. But you know what my takeaway is?
We were almost having a conversation
to a fantastic answer, and we haven't yet told people that Dan Stewart is also our featured guest this week on the InGoal Radio Podcast. So, folks, if you like that, Woody. Stick around.
Were you not listening to the beginning of me?
I never said feature guest this week. You said we interviewed him, but you didn't say he was the feature guest in this week's episode.
He might have you on semantics, but I was following what you were saying.
With our feature guest, Dan Stewart, who is the development coach for the St. Louis Blues. I think most people were picking it up. Most people probably read the headline when they clicked on their podcast. It's okay, Woody. Thanks for clarifying.
So what's your takeaway there?
Well, what I loved was that it went beyond the standard answer, which is just kids don't watch the game enough. They only watch highlights. And he got into specifics about how they can watch the game. And the message that I deliver so often in these parents' pieces is we need to be involved right alongside our kids. And it doesn't mean you have to be the expert. It doesn't mean you have to know much at all, frankly, but you need to be involved in their lives, because to just say, go watch some hockey, not many kids are going to do that. They're going to take the method of least resistance. But if you sit down and do it together and you ask them to give you some feedback, if you ask them to teach you, it's like the old one when our kids come back from school all the time, guys. Hey, what'd you learn today? Nothing. Don't let that be the answer, because that's a whole bit of the education right there, is them telling you what they learned in school today so they can reinforce some of that. Well, let them teach you about the game. And I would add to ask them to tie it back to what they're doing with their goalie coach, whether it's as you watch the game together or you simply ask them, what did you learn today from your goalie coach? Teach me, help me learn to be a better goaltender. I do that with my son all the time. Not so much, what did you learn today in practice from your goalie coach, but we'll be watching a game together and tell me what you saw there. Why would you do it that way? And quite often his thoughts are different than mine, and I get to learn something from
I
him.
love that approach.
It's a neat experience.
Teach me. Help me understand what you were doing. And that, I would probably guess, more than half the time will get the child excited to be the one sort of in charge, the teacher.
Expert.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also don't be shy to maybe raise the opposite. Well, would you not have thought of doing this? And it doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just asking you the question. And I actually say it that way quite often. I'm not telling you I'm right. I just want to hear your opinion. Why wouldn't you do this? And make them think even a little bit more deeply about what they're doing. A lot of fun talking to Dan again this week.
And he asked them why. right? Like he just ask them. Why?
Why?
I would have done this. Why?
Yeah, I would have done that. And then he would have said, because. Or what did you learn? Nothing. This. And then it would be over. And then I'd be frustrated. But that is brilliant stuff. I love that, Hutch. Again, such a great ad. ProReads, brought to us by Vizual Edge. The great inside the game, leaning on a National Hockey League goaltender or a professional goaltender as they review some of their clips. It's like being in a video session with a professional goaltender. It's so cool, and we love it.
It's exactly what it is. And this week's guest is Cam Talbot of the Detroit Red Wings, and we take a look at a 2-on-1 from the blue line. Cam does a great job of identifying information. You know, if you're sitting and watching hockey with your goalie, as the parent segment suggested, you can pick up things from ProReads that are part of the questions that are going to be asked during those breakdowns. Screens, tips, deflections, 2-on-1s, odd man rushes behind the net. We've got it all covered on our ProReads. And like I said, this week is an odd man rush. So identifying key points, handedness, why does it matter in terms of how you move in the crease, what depth you select. Talbot walks us all through that. And then when it comes time for save execution, and part of asking why is, what would you have done differently? And in this case, Talbot, if you answered the question, well, I wouldn't have been that far out, Talbot says the same thing. But I was this far out because this guy's an elite shooter. So I played him to shoot. And so once that doesn't happen, he has to use a technique called the spread. And so he walks us through when and why and how and where he learned it and what a spread is. So this is all part of the weekly session we have with NHL goaltenders over at ProReads. Talbot was a great guest and a perfect guest because it's sponsored by Vizual Edge. Vizual Edge helps you see the puck and see the game better through online diagnostic testing and training tools for both vision and cognitive improvement. You will be able, as Talbot has told us, to find pucks through screens faster and better. It will improve your ability to diverge and see the whole zone, to converge on a puck heading at you with your eyes and see it better from release through contact with you as a goaltender, whether it's into the glove, off the chest, or off the pads. All these elements go into the Vizual Edge training system, which makes them a perfect partner for InGoal Magazine and the ProReads. ProReads help you read and see the game better. Vizual Edge will help you see the puck and the play better. Put them together, you've got a winning combination, and one you can watch every week over at ingoalmag.com.
Over at the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com, they're getting those big trucks ready for a huge event coming up. They're not moving. Like, you're not leaving that space. The store staying in the right spot, but they'll have like a pop-up store.
Tendy Fest is coming June 14th. Make sure you check out Hockey Shop for all the details, how to sign up, get your ice time to test all the gear. It is the best opportunity to get on the ice with the newest equipment and see what fits your game. And speaking of new equipment, there are also a lot of trucks pulling up to the Hockey Shop right now, dropping off new gear, containers full of new equipment. We get into it this week in our gear segment with the new Bauer Vapor line, FlyLite. Get into the pads and gloves. But a reminder, folks, it's not the only part of the line that drops this week. We can only deliver one at a time, but we have banked several deep dives into the new lines of equipment that are coming from Bauer, including the SV Pro. This is all going to be online as of this week over at thehockeyshop.com. So you got to wait for us to break it down and do the reviews on some of this stuff, but you don't have to wait to see it online, to ask Cam and his crew questions about the new line. Most of the Bauer product is dropping on May 23rd. So in addition to what we're doing this week, there's a new chest. There's the new second price point line. There's more coming later in the summer, but there's a ton available now. And as always, that means previous generations are on sale. So make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com, or if you're lucky enough to live in the area or as far away as Seattle. People have driven up from the interior, Calgary, to see us at Tendy Fest in the past. Make sure you come down and check out the latest and the greatest. The new launches are live at the Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. Brand new Bauer Vapor FlyLite. You've seen it in the NHL. You've seen it teased. It's now in store. We've got a new slide tune fit strapping, brand new for this line, and the ability to order something at custom you have never previously been able to do. We're going to get Cam to tell us all about that later. But first, let's start with a general overview of the FlyLite pad. It's a vapor line, so I'm guessing that means
flexible. Yes.
Unlike Cam as a goaltender, this pad is flexible.
No, there's not a lot of flex anymore. The hips are tight. But if you need a soft, flexible pad, that's why we have the brand new Vapor FlyLite. Their softest flex pad.
Oh, wow.
Yes, exactly.
Hold on. Because it's always, the flex had always sort of been, not limited to, but primarily down around the boot and the shin. They've got flex up top this time.
That's correct. But still maintaining rigidity in that upper thigh with adding that Curvex.
So you can see, if we go to the profile, you can sort of see that flex is in around the knee, but there's still,
correct,
like you said, some
almost creating a little bit more of that L shape of a style butterfly.
Ooh.
But still, again,
noticeably more than the previous generation. We never got a chance to test that out, but it feels like it's got more flex than I recall.
I would say it's just a little bit more flex, even though it is like falling under the same flex profile. I do find that this, especially the boot area in particular,
it's nice.
Soft. Yeah, nice.
Right.
Gee, you don't bounce it up and down like basketball.
It's not basketball. Cam, tell us about the rest of the pad.
Okay, moving on to the back. So let's talk about the knee stack first. Extend it. It's about a 1/2 inch longer than the actual surface area of the knee cradle than it was over the previous pad.
So that means, to be NHL legal, either A, this face is thinner than it was before, and because the measurement is from the face to here.
Yeah.
Either that's thinner, this isn't legal, or the previous one was undersized legal. This is max, is what you're telling me, and you'll notice the difference. That's all.
You will notice the difference.
Okay.
I mean, that's what's important for guys that are not playing in the NHL here.
That is a large landing area for those of you wearing oversized knee pads. I like that.
Okay, continuing on, before we get to their new strap.
A little bit of soft cushion, like it's nice and firm, and of course, stability flex.
Yes. Yeah,
So it's still got
a little bit of
give, unlike
That's
the
correct.
Supreme line with
Stability slide.
right, which is
very
totally
rigid.
fixed.
Yes.
And there's a nice soft cushion to the landing area.
Yes,
right
so you get a little bit of shock absorption as you do drop down. But again, just a little bit of play, especially if you're moving anything on the post, reverse VH situations, things like that, where you do want the pad to rock slightly as it moves with you, not against you. Hey, options.
Next,
Turn of,
the tabs.
yes,
For
something that was deleted off of Hyperlite 2 all the way throughout. So it could only be available ordered custom on Hyperlite 2. Now it's added back, so you can still have the tabs there to be able to add in your Professor strap if you wish.
and Bauer makes a Professor strap accessory that you can buy aftermarket. Can you order? You can order it with the pad, I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And does it come with, or you got to order it with?
Aftermarket.
Aftermarket. Okay, but you can buy them here in store
That's correct.
if you want that Professor strap style.
Yes.
Okay, now
New.
slide, tune, fit, strap, all new on the inside. Single bar here.
Yes.
Little get my fingers in there.
Much more
Hard
extended.
plastic.
Yes.
Interesting.
So quite a bit bigger of an actual landing patch for the Velcro itself too as well. So what you're finding is that because this sits on a little bit higher on the upper calf area, I can now nail down the adjustability with the tabs here. I can pull that a little bit tighter, a little bit looser if I want to.
Or a lot tighter or a lot looser. If you skip leg day, you can go right down there.
Correct. So depending on your size of calves and what your personal preference is, find this creates a little bit more of a locked in feel. Now, me personally, I prefer the old 2.0 tune fit strap.
And because these are just leather tabs that the straps slide through, you can swap it out.
You got it. Or if you like the Tune Fit Plus that you find on the Shadow, guess what?
You can put it in this.
Amazing. They thought of that, eh?
Hey, not bad.
Yes,
Transferability.
exactly. So
Okay.
continuing down with a few upgrades as well, you can see they've called out and added some more material in terms of for some of their higher wear points in the pad that we've seen previously from different Vapor models.
Add a little durability.
Exactly.
I also happen to notice there's a boot strap tab here.
Again, something that was deleted, but it's now been added back.
So again, it doesn't come with the pad, but if you want to add a boot strap, you don't have to order. It comes automatically with the ability to sort of attach it.
Correct.
Okay, what else?
So now we're back onto the bottom of the boot, flat boot construction.
Very flat.
Yes.
I would argue that is not a defined channel, Kay Whitmore, but hey.
I mean, there's a little bit of an indent there, so
Yeah, there's lacing going through it, but hey.
It's indented. There you go. There's a boot channel. We found it. Vapor tab, so that is just the thin leather flap at the front, whereas Pro Supreme has that full toe bridge with that HP foam in the middle. Continuing on with their new style of bungee, kind of almost like a bit of a hybrid, having a bit of a gap at the front.
Fixed, so it's not flexible at the front, but then an elastic material from basically after the attachment to the toe. Because the last thing you want is to push off the post and have some give. So I get that.
Yes. So still, obviously, removable, change it out to whatever you want if you don't like this, but good option off that. Last thing to cover, I've seen new updated graphic.
Kind of hot, like it.
Removable, newing, as usual.
All right.
I think we covered the pad.
Let's go to the glove.
Okay. Options for the glove.
Options.
What are you holding?
I am holding, I believe, a Vapor 90.
So, once again, Vapor 90 makes its return, updated with the FlyLite graphic. Single T, game-ready palm. Seems a little bit beefier in the actual break.
Yeah,
glove itself.
It feels a little thicker through sort of the seam. And then without being able to take a puck off it right now, I'm guessing it feels like maybe they've added a little protection in there.
Yes. So mostly for the gloves, it's just a little bit of an update in terms of the materials. Nothing fundamentally changing too much in terms of for playability. Still the same break angle. Stock FlyLite's going to be that 590 style closure. Index finger to the base of your thumb. Kevin, obviously 580.
Okay, so stock is 590, Vapor 90 is custom or
580, but available stock off the wall in different colors to be able to match your gear set.
Right, you have them here.
Yes, on stock colors.
Okay, blocker. Any other changes to the glove cam? We kind of breezed through that one, buddy.
We did really breeze through it, but I mean, in all honesty, we are really talking about a similar glove. So if you do like your Hyperlite 2, you're gonna like your FlyLite.
You may have mentioned this already, but I tend to just ignore you. Double T stock on the stock glove.
Double T stock on the
single T stock on the Vapor.
On the Vapor 90s.
A little bit of a more rounded, deeper pocket if we sort of show the people that compared to the Vapor 90.
So between the two, once again, we are talking about the break angle difference and the overall feel between updated glove.
Stock nylon?
Stock nylon, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So if
you want custom, if you want skate lace, you got to order custom. All right, okay.
Yes. So, okay, gloves.
Blocker.
So again, if you're familiar with your Hyperlite 2 blocker, you're going to be very familiar with your FlyLite blocker. General, same overall feel, slightly more opened up cuff, trimmed down a little bit on the actual cuff piece itself. I still find that in an extreme forward position, I do find a little bit of torque on these elastics, just something I noticed with my own personal set. But I do feel that this is actually a little bit more mobile. I have less cup interference in this over a Hyperlite 2. Same tight fitting palm as well, continuing that trend that Bauer's kind of coined. More of a player palm fit. So nice, good control. I find the blockers nice and snug. I don't have any slop with it. Nice. Overall, good punch.
There's enough slop in your game, Cam. We don't need
so I don't need it in my blocker.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we tease it at the beginning.
Yes. What?
And we haven't gotten to it. There is a custom feature available on this pad that was never available before unless you're in the NHL.
Didn't I tell you about that?
The point would be to tell the people.
So, not gatekeeping this any longer, Bauer offers custom thighs. Sizing. Plus sizing. Something wasn't available necessarily in the past. So, stock Bauer. So,
you've got your small, medium, large.
Correct.
Which is, for example, a +1. So
1.5.
When did that happen?
That's always been that way. So,
it used to be +1, Cam. It definitely always
when they didn't use
when
they didn't use the label on small, medium, large.
Don't make me go back to the archives in the first reveal of the original Supreme Odin pad and tell you that it's 34 +1. But anyways, okay, it's now 34 +1.5.
Correct. Which is why when you see, so say, for example, you want a medium, but with a large thigh, that's +0.5.
Okay.
And that makes it a +2.
So you can get customized thigh rises for the first time ever, something that was previously only available for NHL guys. You can now custom order. If you're in a medium, which is a 34, but you've got super long thighs and you want an extra thigh rise or a little help closing, especially with this flexibility, a little help closing the butterfly, you can add to the, can you subtract? Can you make it shorter? Just add. We are all about addition here on the InGoal Gear Review with Cameron. So it's only add. You can get higher thigh rises than the stock plus 1.5 that comes with the Bauer FlyLite.
Custom.
Of course.
Custom. So if you want to talk about custom, give me a call at 604-589-1899 or 1-800-567-7790, or check us out at thehockeyshop.com.
We'll go get a coffee, wake up, keep up with the rest of us to the rest of this segment.
Custom.
Bauer FlyLite, lots of exciting parts. Make sure if you got any questions, Cam gave you the number, give him a call, reach out, get all your custom options, custom, and what they have in stock, they'll have plenty. Good job, Cam.
FlyLite.
So the Vapor and the FlyLite, covering that right now. And you mentioned the second price point. I get confused sometimes with the titles of the lines. Vapor, and is there another line of the gear, or
Supreme?
So Supreme and Vapor are your two primary families. Supreme being a stiffer pad, typically. Vapor being the more flexible. The FlyLite is the latest iteration of the Vapor line, taking over for, what was it, Hutch? Hyperlite 2.
Correct.
So is Supreme dropping at the same time? Is it
Supreme will drop next year. They alternate years.
Oh, they alternate
last year was the Supreme Shadow, and next year they got something new coming.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little tease.
Love hearing that. Hey, I've noticed, Woody, online, social media, YouTube, doing some stuff over there with some
A little bit more.
gear reviews. Green screen and
No green screen, but
okay, what's the background? Because it's just Woody doing some of this stuff.
Just a color backdrop.
we're just a little studio colored background.
It's really good.
It's story time
Thank
with
you.
Woody.
Yeah.
We just decided that we're taking the time to head over to the hockey shop. They've got all these fantastic resources there. We would take advantage of being together and having all our gear and everything, and just shoot a little bit more gear content that we can bring to people through the stories format on the various platforms.
I
The
discovered
reality-
that on my own, and that's through on YouTube where I saw that.
You name it, YouTube, Instagram,
Okay.
a little bit
We
on
try-
TikTok.
Yeah, we try and
Yeah.
put it everywhere. It's basically, we understand, folks. You don't always want to sit through 5 minutes of Woody and Cam talking about gear. So we're going to give you quick hits
Mhm.
on your social medias and dig into one. We just did an overview, for example, of the FlyLite line, and Cam talked about how the landing area is bigger, Darren. And you probably saw, folks, a reminder that our gear segment is simulcast over at YouTube. So if you watch it there, you would have seen a puzzled look on Woody's face. Because how do they make the knee stack bigger? There is a NHL maximum on the distance between the face of the pad and the edge of the knee stack. So what did they do? How did they pull it off? Well, went into the back room and had a look and got the tape measures out and figured it exactly out. And that'll be coming a little later in the week in a YouTube short or over at our Instagram channel. It's just us digging into each individual feature of the new lines a little more personally, a little more intimately, and in a little more detail.
Awesome stuff. And when I stumbled on it, I thought, "Where's Cam?" But then it was shorter, so I saw what you guys were doing there, and it was impressive. I enjoyed it.
So it was shorter, and you thought, well, that's because Cam's not
That's
here. But how is it shorter if Woody's still here?
Good point. I felt bad.
The answer is Director Hutch.
I missed my
Standing there with the
Cam.
clock.
Like, it's not as detailed of a breakdown of the gear. If it catches your interest and you like it, you probably still want to get the full, complete version of you and Cam breaking it down. But it is good. It's for being on the flow. Yeah.
If you take the sum of all of those little pieces, it may well even be a bit more detailed, because Woody loves to dive deep into things. So, but one of those pieces on their own, probably a little bit deeper into something like the knee stack, for example, as Kevin was just talking about. But you'll just have to wait to see them come out over time so you can get the full meal deal.
It's Cam-free gear talk. That's what it is.
Cam free. I saw the one with the true pants, and I'm still buzzing about those.
You're
It's
not the
kinda
only
funny
one that's buzzing. We got a few phone calls from people in the States saying, where the hell do I get these? It's not everybody has them yet.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they're still available, because I was looking at them last night. So there's
I'm a
still
little
stock left at the hockey shop.
Cam ordered up. I'm a little surprised, but I do think there is a certain hesitation right now from some people to order equipment and have it shipped across the border because there's uncertainty on both ends. Like nobody knows. This is just, and the hockey shop is honest when people call. They just can't be sure whether there's going to be tariffs applied. Sometimes it's not even supposed to be a tariffed item and it gets applied. Like there just seems to be a lot of uncertainty around that. So some people don't want to run the risk of adding 25 to 30% to a product and not having any control over it.
Good point. So work with them. They'll work with you. They'll tell you everything they know about.
Woody would smuggle it across the border for you and drop ship it, but he values his ability to go into the United States and his Nexus Pass, so not going to happen. Don't call me.
Hear what he just said there, Hutch? He would do it, but he's not going to do it.
That's pretty much, yeah. We're a long ways from the days in high school when I lived in a border town and people just freely passed from one direction to the next.
I'd do it for you, but I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, but you know what? It actually also speaks to Woody's character in a really positive way.
It does.
Because some stranger on the internet could phone him up and say, hey, would you mind picking this up at the hockey shop and getting it off to me? And Woody'd be up to his eyeballs in 14 different things and he'd drop everything to go and help somebody. So
amazing. Sense Arena feature interview. We teased it, and Woody really, really teased it earlier.
Did we? I'm going to need to hear the tape on that one.
With our feature guest, Dan Stewart, who is the development coach for the St. Louis Blues. Who is it this week?
Some guy named Dan Stewart, but it's a good one, eh? Oh, it's a good one.
Brought to us by Sense Arena.
Summer can be really tough for goalies, guys. They're often alone for their training. Of course, you might have a camp lined up or some time with a coach, but you end up with a lot of time on your hands wondering what to do for your training. Enter NHL Sense Arena's new goalie advancement program. It's a fully guided training program for goalies of all ages and skill levels designed to help you in 3 key areas. That's angles, traffic, and reading the release. Each course features 3 different difficulty levels tailored to your age and shot speed, 3 training days per level with 6 to 8 drills per session. And of course, they all come with expert insight from Brian DeCord of Stop It Goaltending. This summer, you can let NHL Sense Arena and their new goalie advancement program guide your off-ice development with structured, expert-led training. Visit sensearena.com and use the code IGM50 at checkout and get started today.
Your turn, Woody.
I'm doing it. I love it.
Yeah, who's the feature interview, Woody?
Oh, it's Dan Stewart.
Oh, Stewie.
I thought we already established that.
Stewie.
I
love
just
Stewie.
In case anybody missed it.
I do love how you told me that they probably know as soon as they click on the episode and the giant art comes up and shows them Dan Stewart's smile. Listen, jokes aside about who our feature guest is this week and my inability to understand the nuance of Hutch teasing it earlier, there is going to be nothing misunderstood about this feature interview. Dan was excellent. Peeling back the curtain a little bit on what they look for, what they work on. No hesitation to give us specific examples. I mean, think of the guys he's had a hand in developing already early in his career. He's 5 years in at the American Hockey League level, but as you'll come to understand, been doing it for a lot longer than that at other levels. Think about Joel Hofer and how quickly he was ready for the National Hockey League. You think about Charlie Lindgren and the season he had with the St. Louis Blues. 1 year there, springboards into an NHL opportunity with Washington and hasn't looked back. The changes in his game under Dan's watch, working with David Alexander in the St. Louis Blues system. Dan talks about their working relationship, the way they operate as a department and support each other. There are so many different things takeaway-wise in this one, whether you're a young goalie, a goalie looking to advance their career up through junior. By the way, Dan owns a junior C team in Port Hope, Ontario. We get into that. There are takeaways for goalie coaches. There are takeaways for goalie departments in the NHL, because I got to be honest, when he talks about the way they support each other and work together, that doesn't exist on every team in the NHL. So from the lowest levels for young goalies that Dan works with in the summer, right up to National Hockey League goaltending departments, there is something for you to help you get better at what you do in this interview with Dan Stewart. It is, as I like to say, and don't get to say often enough when I'm part of it, maybe this is just because Hutch was in on the interview, a can't misser.
Enjoy. It's InGoal Radio, the podcast, with our Sense Arena feature interview with Dan Stewart.
Really excited to welcome to the InGoal Radio Podcast. First time guest after 5 years in the St. Louis Blues organization as the goaltending development coach and working with their team in the American Hockey League. Dan Stewart. I should note before we say hi to Dan, we've got David Hutchison with us. Dan is such a wealth of knowledge that we figured it required two of us to pick his brain. Dan, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this, guys.
So we're going to get into, I know you've got a lot of great advice that is going to resonate with parents and coaches and goalies. But first, I want to hear a little bit about your path to here, not before coaching, like the playing days. There was an entry on the Hockey DB that I'm very curious about in the EPHL in 08-09, like 10 years after you finished playing Canadian University hockey in the OHL. So where did the passion start as a goaltender for you? Talk about your playing days and then that transition. When did you know that coaching was for you?
For me, I started, my dad was a goalie, and my introduction to goaltending was, I think, him literally with my diaper bag over his shoulder taking me to his men's league games in Port Hope, Ontario. And then that grew into me playing hockey. And at 4, I basically refused to go out there if I wasn't the goalie. So they came up with a deal where I could do the practices in net and the games in goal, or reversed. Actually, the practices I would be the goalie, and then the games I would have to play forward, because our goalie, his name was Dan Gabois, he didn't want to always be in net. And then the next year I was full-time goalie in what they called beginner back then. Then played novice, Adam, Pee-wee, Bantam in Port Hope. And there was no regional AAA back then, so you weren't allowed to just go play quote unquote better hockey. But that also meant that the local hockey was better, because the high end players were just playing where they lived, and that was that. So after Bantam, in order to go to a higher level, I went and played junior A on the Coburg Cougars. So I was, I guess, 15 playing on the Coburg Cougars, and then I was lucky enough to be drafted by London into the OHL. Had a very minimal OHL career for sure, which is something that I talk to the goalies about a lot, because I was a high pick into that league, and it didn't work out, because in my head the draft was like the pinnacle. And it's a good learning lesson for everybody that like stuff starts there. It doesn't end there. And I am proof positive of that with the minimal amount that I played. And then at 19, I was cut and played in the OJHL for the Lindsay Muskies. Then I went out to Nova Scotia and played for the East Hants Penguins in the Maritime Junior A League. And from there, I went to St. Mary's University. Trevor Steinberg, who's now a scout with Seattle, he coached me that last year junior, and then got the job at St. Mary's University and brought me with him. So I spent 3 years there. Then I was done. And during my time playing in junior as well as playing in university, I worked Rick Hines goalie schools. And the number of guys that I still keep in touch with today, Dave Delecki is a very good friend of mine, and he runs the Crease in Etobicoke, which is an unreal goalie school. I run into, Alex Westland. Him and I sharing the elevator ride up together in an AHL game was pretty cool. So I did that work for Rick, and it was a great summer job. It was exciting, a lot of fun, city to city. And when I was done playing, Rick approached me and said, I want to keep you as an instructor. I don't want to lose you, so don't go get a job. I'll build you a mini rink and you can do private lessons. And we chose Connecticut as the location for that. So I was, 24 years old, moved down to Connecticut, 0 students, 0 clue what I was doing, built this mini rink, and I was like left to my own, right? Like there's wood, all this stuff for me to just build this rink. Never run a power tool in my life. The Zamboni drivers were really helpful with me there at Champion Skating Center, and built a business called CT Crease, and it just kind of went from there.
the number of guys over the years that we've had on this pod. I feel like we're 300 and this will be 304 episodes in, Dan. And top of my head, like I feel like got to be at least a dozen that have talked about their coaching experience at Rick Hines. Like a lot of guys that move up have experience as younger goalies coaching at Rick Hines goalie schools. I love that.
Oh, it's such a cool gig. So you would Saturday was the flying day. So you would jump on a plane and go to whatever city you're going to. You'd land. Rick would have the rental car set up for you, and then the hotel, which was usually like the Red Roof Inn. And you'd round up the guys. No cell phones when I first started doing it. So like using those airport things to be like, hey, Ryan Lowe, paging Ryan Lowe, and you're trying to like connect with these guys. And you'd round up the troops, get in the rental car, go to the hotel. Then you would spend the night in the new city, right? Which at that age usually meant some fun. And then Sunday, you would have to get yourself together, find the rink, get in contact with the local coordinator, and you would go to the rink and do the sign up. So at this young age, you're doing all of this work. Because Rick's never at these camps. So it's just you and three other guys kind of running it. And you put the camp together, and then Monday morning you go there and you work it. It was like, the job was 8 a.m. until 2 and you were done. So then you're sitting by the pool or whatever if you're at a nice hotel. And then the next Saturday you'd go to the next city. If it was close, you'd drive, or you might have to take guys to the airport for them to go, or you yourself is flying to the next city and usually meeting up with a group of different guys.
What was the biggest lesson you took out of all of that you think informed your career moving forward?
I would say problem solving. So the number of times you arrive somewhere and things aren't at what you're used to seeing, and you get there, for example, I can't remember where this was, but I showed up and the local coordinator was new and there was 0 shooters. So we show up and there's 30 goalies on the ice. And there's the 4 of us plus, say, 6 local goalie helpers who are usually high school kids. And I was running the camp. I was the head instructor. I think I was 20 at the time. And I had to figure out how to make this work in such a way that it wasn't going to be terrible. And I wasn't going to get back to my hotel with that red button just flashing saying call it. So for sure, I would say the other part is, we had multiple levels out there on the same sheets a lot of the time. So we ran a regular and advanced and an elite program. And you had to find ways to get the goalies what they deserve to get from the camp, given that there was all these different levels out there. And at a young age, we were able to do that. It was pretty cool. And Rick gave us the freedom to come up with solutions to that stuff. So I think I was the first person. We had an elite group out there, and it was like 3 goalies, and the rest of the goalies were regular and advanced. Mm-hmm. And rather than handing out 3 different drills or whatever, I just gave the elite goalies their same net, and everybody rotated around them, and they got the same instructor for the whole day who had his group of drills with those goalies. So things like that, where you just have to be creative and make it work as best you can.
Looking back on all of that and those great lessons, those great experiences, there's a lot of young goaltenders who are winding up their career and deciding it's time to take that next step. What do you say to them as they step into a coaching role? How do they establish themselves? How do they continue learning in a job that is just grind to try and make a living? There's not a lot of time to lift your head up as you're trying to make a living as a young coach. What do you say to that young kid coming out of junior hockey, coming out of college, whatever, trying to set up shop?
Well, I think for a guy my age, like I'm 49 now, and I moved to Connecticut in 2001, and was lucky enough to be the only guy down there doing what I was doing. So people came to me, the word traveled fast, and I developed a reputation that probably went beyond my skill set at the time. And goalies today coming out don't have that luxury. It's very competitive. So my recommendation to them would be to stay true to themselves, make sure that you stay true to yourself, be a good person, right? Care and do good work. And the other thing that I would suggest to them is you are going to build your success one goalie at a time. This isn't something where you're going to latch on to a goalie that's playing at a higher level and they're going to be your ride. You're going to have to do it one goalie at a time, doing good work, caring, being a good person. And that's what's going to have people recognize that you're doing something different. And once people realize that, and you're just being yourself out there, then the word travels around because they recognize that you're doing something different.
I love that you bring up being a good person, caring. We've had so many coaches on the show talk to us about how building that relationship with a goaltender is paramount before you can even affect any changes into their game. So talk to me a little bit more about the importance of a relationship, whether we're talking about the young kids that you've worked with along the way or even at the pro level now.
Yeah, it's been everything for me. Right from day one, when I was doing one-on-one lessons in Connecticut, my biggest thing was to make sure that I took the time to learn some things about that goalie that are going to help them feel comfortable with me and also help me coach them better. In terms of pro, like my first full year in the American League after the COVID year, I had Joel Hofer and Charlie Lindgren. And Charlie's a battler. He's a warrior. And if I'd have worked with him in the same way that I worked with Joel, now I joke with Joel, I'm like, sometimes I have to put a mirror under your nose to make sure you're still breathing out there. They're so different, right? And if I tried to work with them the same way and not learn the things that they value and not make it very clear to them that I want to work with them to make them the best version of themselves, then I'm going to lose them. I can give them any knowledge or any tips or anything. It's over before it starts. So for me, the first thing to do is learn about your athlete, learn what makes them tick, learn their personality, learn what type of person they are, learn what they value, and then work within that to help them, again, just be the best version of themselves. Now, obviously with Charlie, there were my discussions with him where I love that you're willing to attack and play and battle like this. I want to help you pick some better times to not do it and understand that it's an asset that you have that makes you special if we cannot go to it all the time. With Joel, it was more like your calm demeanor and your ability to wait and just be patient is so strong and so good. I want you to be engaged a little bit more and get in the fight a little bit more. And here are some scenarios where I think that would help you. But again, if I'd have just coached those two guys the same, I would have made them both worse.
Did you, with those two, not play them off each other, but the fact that they were so different and they each had elements that the other could learn from? Like, are you using them together as part of this process? I remember a similar story with Pekka and UC Saros in Nashville, where they wanted, Pekka to be a little ironically calmer and mirror UC, and they wanted UC to have a little more of Pekka's compete. And so they tried to sort of have that conversation with all three, the goalie coach and both guys involved.
I think conversationally, yes. Video wise, no. So I never grabbed clips of Joel to show Charlie or vice versa. But certainly during goalie sessions, they're playing a scenario from the trapezoid up to the hash marks, let's say, and they're going to have different ways of doing that. And I'm going to be looking for slightly different key points for both of them. And I would bring them both in and talk about it and say, for Hove, this is, and did you see how Charlie actually did do just that? I would like you to see you do your version of that. And then vice versa with Charlie.
One of the struggles, I think, for a lot of young coaches, Dan, is confidence. They're in a new environment, and a situation that you were walking into in the American League, you hadn't played at that level. You're having to go and coach for the first time at that level. How do you have the confidence to work with kids that and I say kids because they are pretty young, that are playing at that level, and now you're arriving for the first time and have to be the leader.
I think I was really lucky. Two things that I've been really fortunate with in my entrance to pro hockey. Number one is David Alexander. So David is the goalie coach of the Blues and runs our goalie department. And David does an unbelievable job of making sure that I never feel alone. So we have a good relationship. It's like business relationship, you know what I mean? And he does a really, really good job of making sure that I know that he's with me, he's got my back, and that he's aware of what's going on. Now that takes constant communication between the two of us. But I think as the guy who's running our department, David does an unbelievable job of that. And when you talk to some other dev guys, they don't have that relationship with the NHL goalie coach that I have. So that was really big for me. David always let me know that he believed in my work and that he saw something different and that I was free to go. Now, in terms of development planning and stuff like that, like we do it together very much, but it's not just one of us coming up with whatever. This is us talking it through, doing it together and coming up with a plan for each goalie. And then it's on me to implement it, right? And execute it. So David was huge in that regard. Second was Curtis Sanford. So Curtis, my first year in Utica, we shared that team with Vancouver. So once I, tested negative for COVID and got down there and all that, I was in an office where I shared an office with Curtis Sanford. So he had done the job, obviously, with Vancouver as their goalie development guy. And he gave me a lot of confidence. And we were on the ice together. Neither of us had our top prospects down there that year at the start because of the taxi squad. Michael DiPietro and Joe Hofer were both up in the big club at first. So we had the other prospects were there, and they're good goalies. But what that brought was more of a sense of unity for Curtis and I to work with these guys together. And then you're sharing ideas, you're sharing drills. And I remember one day, I kind of said to him, "Hey, how do you think it's going?" And he was like, "I've picked up at least 3 things from you that I am going to take forward and utilize. And I hope it's been the same for you." And I was like, "Yeah, like there's this one drill. I'm going to do it from now on." And he's like, "Awesome." He's like, "Listen, like you're good at this. You can do this. Just go be yourself." And that was huge for me to have that, because you don't feel like you're just thrown in the middle of the ocean without a raft.
What would you suggest for somebody who doesn't have that sort of support network? Do you have to, as a young coach, just reach out and develop your own sort of mentorship relationships with somebody at another level? Or how do you network as a young coach? What would be a good step to take?
Well, networking is something I'm not very good at, unfortunately. So I would be probably the last person to give advice on that. Now, what I will say is, again, like when you develop relationships with other goalie coaches, stay true to yourself, be yourself, and understand there's lots of goalies out there for everybody to work with, and be above all the competitive junk. Perhaps arrogantly, when I moved back to Ontario in 2009, it's a very competitive lay of the land here with goalie coaches in this region. And I always held myself above it and was like, I'm not involved in that, and assumed that others would feel the same way. Now, I'm sure they didn't, but just understand that there are good guys doing good work out there, and there are plenty of goalies to go around, and have good relationships with other goalie guys. Don't make it competitive. Don't make it so that anybody's going to be able to say anything bad about you based on something you've said about them or whatever. And don't get defensive if a kid comes to you and says, my other goalie coach says blah, blah, blah. Number one, you're not getting the goalie coach's version of what was said. You're getting the goalie's version. And number two, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. So you don't have to be right. Just let it go and control the things that you can control. Same as we tell our goalies, right? Mm-hmm. So my advice to them, honestly, would be just that. Like, focus on the things that you can control. Have good relationships with the other goalie people that you know and are involved with. Have positive relationships with them, and keep them and stay true to them. And hopefully then you'll be able to reach out, right? Like I have a network of goalie coaches that I've come across along the way, and I've kept in touch with for years and years and years, because when I started talking about them, I respected them, they respected me, and you're able to reach out to them, right? And if anybody listening to this is starting off and I happen to coach them or be involved in their life in any way earlier, they can feel free to reach out to me and I will help them in any way I can.
That decision to go back to Ontario, and you end up starting, at least from a coaching profile, with Coburg in the OJHL. Spent 5 years there. You were close to a decade working OJ up to the OHL before getting the opportunity to work the American Hockey League and work with the Blues. Advice for that process? Was there any point along the way, as much as you had success building the business in Connecticut, was the goal always to be at the pro level on the other side of it? Were there any points where you wondered if that wasn't going to happen, and what would your advice be? Because that's 9 years in junior, and I know that can be a grind. Advice for other goalies that are going through that right now in terms of being content where you are versus aspiring to keep moving up.
Well, I think for me too, it was 9 years after 9 years. So right. I did 9 years in Connecticut, where I you know what I was like, I worked my way up to a Division I college, goalie coach there. The goalie school was quite big and successful, and I moved back home and was like hit over the head with a frying pan, where there are other goalie coaches in the area that kind of race around and chase work, practice. And I was trying to build this mini rink where kids would just come, and it didn't happen. So then I had to adjust my approach to the work and accept the fact that I can't just have goalies come see me, and I'm going to have to go to their practices. And it helped me a lot. And again, Dave Dalecki was huge in my transition back to Ontario, because he gave me work right away. And again, you know, we're both high level goalie coaches, and he welcomed me with open arms and never told me once what to do in my sessions. He trusted me that I was going to do good work, and he let me go to it, same as I would him. And then when I was working, my first junior job here was actually with the Port Hope Panthers junior C team, because my dad volunteers and does the 50-50 there and all that stuff. And that's actually built into my wife and I buying that team last spring, but another story. And then I moved up and to the Cougars, which is where I used to play. And it was around the age 35 where I recognized that, like, shooting pucks and being on the ice for 9 hours at a clip was starting to affect my body. So I kind of developed a plan to try and get an OHL job and then hopefully an NHL development job. But the way to do that is to be where your feet are, be a good person, do good work, care about others, and that's the key. And if you're not focused on where your feet are, you're in trouble. And that's the same for any coach or player. You know, take care of your business where you are, do good work, be a good person, and then you'll get to where you should be.
That's great advice. It is a grind though, right? Like, any advice for sort of managing that, you know, like, because at junior hockey levels, it can feel like a full-time job sometimes, but it rarely pays like a full-time job.
Well, I think before the OHL, I was paid $0 by any junior program I worked with. You're doing it to have your name out there, and, you know, to be able to let people know that you're capable of doing higher level work as you're working with the kids that are paying for your mortgage. So when I got the OHL job, it was a switch. At least I was getting paid. Now, it wasn't a full-time pay, that's for sure, but it gave you that respectability in the industry that now you're getting paid. You can back off on your sessions, put more focus into this, because when I went into it, I'll never forget Chris Boyle, the guy that did the shot quality project, and I trained his son Patrick. And I remember when I got the job, Chris said to me, you need to treat this like it's a full-time job. And if it's something that they say will require 50% of your time, put 100 into it. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to be noticed as different from anybody else who's doing those jobs. And I took that advice very seriously and did it, and then got lucky and fortunate that my hard work and some successes paid off, and I was able to land this job with the Blues, which is my dream job.
Have you ever had that conversation with Dave? Because his background in terms of that grind and that effort and that work at the minor league level to move up, I mean, it feels like similar paths and similar approaches.
Yeah, for sure. And once Dave and I started through the interview process, the number of people who applied was pretty high. And I didn't know David. So I did know Dave Rogalski, who had the job before. He's one of the guys that I would touch base with before he had his job in St. Louis. And he and I would talk quite a bit. And when Dave and I started along in the interview process, he realized that I went to school in the Maritimes. And when we talked about path, it was very similar. And that helped us kind of make a connection. And the funny part, and this is another lesson for somebody hoping to move on, my biggest character reference to David Alexander did not come from Dave Rogalski, who I thought it would. My biggest character reference to David Alexander came from a friend of mine, Chad Murray, who I played out in Halifax with at St. Mary's University, who happened to teach high school with David Alexander before he left.
Good lesson there about being a good person, I think.
Yes. Every step along the way.
Yeah. As a default, not just in front of the people you think can help you, right? It's who you are around everyone else versus just the people you think can help you.
100%. 100%.
Dan, can you talk to us maybe a little bit about what that day-to-day looks like? What did it look like when you were in the OHL trying to give 100% to that job? And then maybe what's a little bit different about the pro game as well? How's a pro goalie coach spend his time?
Yeah. So in the OHL, I was in the Soo every other week. So I would get myself to the Island Airport in Toronto, and the Soo would have paid for a flight for me to fly to the Soo. I would get off. I would head to the hotel that they had me at, and then I would be at the rink basically from about 8 a.m. until 7 p.m. every day in the Soo.
Wow.
When I was there, they were long days. We had a morning group that would go on because they didn't go to school. So they would be at the rink for 9, they'd work out, they'd go on the ice. And my first year there, Joseph Raymakers was in that group. So I got to do lots of goalie work with him during that time. And then there's the high school group that would get to the rink basically at 3:00. And Matthew Villalta was in that group. So Matty's goalie work would come either before practice or after, depending on kind of what the schedule was for from Drew Bannister's perspective, as he was the head coach then. And on weeks off, where I was home, my job would be to stay on top of things and send goalie drills and touch base with the guys and see how their day went. And you're still on, but you're just not on site. And then I would obviously watch the games online, and I would use my MacBook to screen record anything that I wanted to review with them. I would make an iMovie, then I would put it into Coach's Eye, and then I would voice over and do whatever I needed to do, and then send it to the boys.
Yeah. Also, what does a video review session look like? How do you conduct a session, whether it's with those younger kids at the OHL level or now with your NHL prospects that you're dealing with?
I think so much of that depends on the goalie. But one thing I do know over the years, what I've learned more and more and more and more, is that video is for them, not me.
Mm-hmm.
I tried really hard to stop trying to make sure that they knew I saw everything, or that, right? And I tried to make the video session shorter and shorter and shorter to make sure that it was to hit the key points that we want to hit, not just to make sure that they know that I saw everything they did right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and that I watched the game or whatever. So a typical goalie session for me, say with Colton Ellis or Vadim Zarenko this past year, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes in length. I would have some handles picked out from the game. I would have some skating and read stuff the in zone or off the rush that I wanted to go over, or maybe on the PK. Then I would have some like traffic and battle is kind of a section that I would have for them, where I just pick a couple clips and go over it. And we talk about the other part of it for me is as I get older, I talk less in those interview or those video sessions, and the goalies talk more. So there are more questions from me saying like, what did you see here? What were you reading here? What did you think here? How did you get here? That type of stuff. And to the point now where like Colton Ellis will reach over and actually start hitting the buttons to move the video, right? I don't even have to do that with him, which is pretty cool. Hof was the same. He was great.
Is that something specific to the pro level, or if you were to go back to the suit today, or maybe even back to minor hockey, would you be working in the same way with those kids? And I'm talking video, but generically as well.
Yeah, I think for me, like as with anybody in life, I would love to go back and have a conversation with the 26, 27-year-old version of myself. Then I would change all kinds of things. But we get to the spot that we're at through all of that learning, right? I definitely, if I was to go back and do an OHL video tomorrow session with the goalie, I would, as long as they knew the principles that I was, let's say we had 5 principles to the position that we were really focusing on for that year, and that goalie knew them, I would definitely let them speak a lot during those video sessions and let them as well run parts of it and do what I do more with the guys in pro for sure.
Okay, you piqued my interest big time there, to the extent that you can without giving away the secret sauce. Can you talk about what maybe 5 principles would be for a goaltender with the sort of things that you're talking about?
Yeah, for sure. Like obviously, like for me, the stance would be one. Maybe the movement within their stance. A second one that I would definitely hit on would be access. So for me, it's very important that goalies have access to their blades at all times, whether you're down or up, you're on the post, you're wherever you are. I want you to have access to your blades in scenarios that the guy on the other end can't. And if you have access to your blades through these more difficult scenarios further along the chain than other goalies, you're going to be good. Right? That, I mean, to me, if you're down and you need to get to your left and you're able to dig in your right leg from an extended position, and that's going to leave your left pad flared out as well, right? Because if you pull that right leg in and wrap it under yourself, that or in tight to under your hip for quote unquote more power, the lead leg wraps around you. If you can plant wider, that lead leg stays out and essentially closes the door early for you, right? So I'm big on guys having access from that wider position so they're able to slide, especially the shorter distances where we don't have any time. I want them to have access to that blade from a wider position where they can have some pop with that lead leg not wrapping under them, because then they're already covering space before they go.
I'm curious because that's like biomechanically, not everybody can do that. There are just going to be some guys that are narrower in terms of not being able to have that flare. But do you get into things like equipment, like how you do up your pads and how you set up your gear can affect your ability to access edges especially from extended range of movement? Like, do you get into those types of details with them, or they have to kind of figure that out on your own? How important is, say, equipment to these conversations?
I will give them ideas. They're free to do what they want with their stuff.
Of course.
But an example, one goalie we added some knots to the lace. And people who know me, like I'm the last guy to get into that type of stuff. But he was having issues with recoveries and slipping out a lot and didn't have access. And I knew that that's a way to have more access. And I said, have you ever thought about boom? And he said, well, how many? I'm like, play with it. Come up with what feels right and what has you still able to get that good push while not feeling like your pad's all over the place. And he did that, and it was a great adjustment for him. In terms of, what kind of pads they wear or whatever, that's up to them. I again though, like If I think somebody would benefit from being in a harder pad, I'll let them know. If I think a goalie is struggling to catch pucks because their glove breaks down too fast or because they're using a break that isn't for them, I'll let them know. And then it's on them to kind of make that decision as to whether they want to make that change or not. I think if you overstep as a goalie coach and start controlling that stuff, you're now going to go over into the goalie's comfort level, and you're going to negatively affect them as being the best version of themselves. They're going to now be doing just what they're told by you.
But you're cognizant of it. Like, I mean, I'm not sure every goalie coach, is thinking about those details as part of these discussions.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's our job, in my opinion, to have solutions for these guys and have ideas for these guys that can help them. And sometimes you're going to be wrong. And that's okay. But you have to make sure that you're giving these guys as much help as you can in a way that works for them.
I've gone through my whole life being wrong all the time, Dan. So that's why I'll give Hutch the next question.
Well, you just piqued my interest so much with where you went with access, because that wasn't something I was ready for. We've been through 2 principles. Can you give me a couple more? Because I think I'm going to learn something else.
I think it's important. Again, these are going to be individualized to each goalie, right? Yep. They're not going to be things that you're just going to slap on. But staying within the frame would be one, right? So for me, staying within the frame would be making sure that you have, you're living between the crossbar and the post, and that you're not, to use a Mike Lawrence term, that you're not let out to sea as the play goes off to the sides.
I like that one. Is that part of, like, as you've adjusted, because since you've started working at the pro level, the pro game has changed. Like, within those 5 years, what succeeded or what led to success as a goaltender 5 years ago might not translate at the same result it does now. And the east-west nature of it, is that, I mean, have you had to make adjustments that way as the game changes around your guys?
Oh, for sure. If you don't adjust in this role, you're done. Like, as soon as you think you have it figured out, you are done. Now, that said, what was important to the position when I was growing up in terms of the base principles, in my opinion, are still important today. And the easiest way, the most effective way to teach those things is usually the most direct and simplest approach. So if I were to go do a session with a 13-year-old tomorrow and do the same drills that I do with Colton Ellis and Vadim Zarenko and Will Cranley, that goalie may leave that session and think, like, that guy doesn't do anything hard. He doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's incapable of having me do these other things, right? Like, I went to watch like a U7 tryout as a favor to somebody, and I watched the 2 goalies, and man, they could go down, they could get in their RVH, they could slide around, they could do all kinds of cool things. They couldn't shuffle, they couldn't T-push, right? They couldn't really C-cut, and their stance was all based around going down. Now, for me, right, I'm a believer in having your feet underneath you. Again, that starts the access process, right? If we start from a good position in terms of having access to our blades, the likeliness of having it further along the chain is just better, right? Now, in terms of where they hold their glove, that's again individualized, but you should have a strong athletic position to start in that allows you to move and make saves. And I think if Colton Ellis were on this show ever, he would say the biggest difference between him being in the East Coast League and being our MVP in the American Hockey League was he changed his stance to having his feet more underneath him. And it was such a change for him in terms of access to his edges, both up and down.
It's a trend we've seen. You're right. Like we talk a lot about it with guys narrowing the stance and getting their feet under them and holding them under them and as an adjustment up to pro. sometimes not the easiest, like really easy for us to say, really easy for somebody to point to, but sometimes not an easy process to get a guy to go through, especially from a stance perspective, because they can feel like they're a long way from the ice, especially big goalies. Any advice for as other coaches trying to get their kids to there?
For sure. The first thing you have to do is help that goalie develop some confidence making saves from that position. And that's the most common resistance to it that I've found over the years, is the goalie saying, I can't make a save from that stance. And I'll say, okay, well, you're using it to skate everywhere. Like every time I put you in a skating drill, you go into the exact stance I'm looking for. Why do you do that? Well, it's easier to move. I'm like, oh, again, you're making my point for me. Now you need to trust your ability to get down to the ice, right? And you need to trust your ability to make saves from this position. I get it. You've never done it. I get it. You've never had to. I get it. Your brain and athleticism have allowed you to never need to do this. But if you want to push through the envelope and get to the next level, you have to do this. And then I will place the puck in between the hash marks right in the middle and say, now show me what stance you should use here. And if the goalie goes into that perfect one that David skated in or whatever, I'm like, no, now you got to get wide, buddy. Because now the play's in tighter, the emphasis on what we're trying to accomplish becomes different.
So much of that adjustment that you talk about, like as much as the foundations haven't changed, at least what I hear, it's tactical. It's understanding as the game changes, maybe our applications of the foundations have to change at specific times, which goes back to one of your principles where you talked about reads. And so that ability to read the game and know when to do what, how do we help kids get there reading because we hear that a lot. You talked about kids moving in the reverse, and you know, I'm going to use the phrase, I goalie school goalie, hate to do it, quotes around it, but you know, how do we help them understand that moving is one thing, being able to anticipate and know when to do what, and reading the game, like, is it video? Is it playing? Is it how do you do that?
Well, again, my approach, I can only give you my thoughts on it and my examples, but video is obviously important, but so is so if a goalie's struggling, figuring out when they can be a little bit more upright versus when they need to get lower, put them through a bunch of drills that do that. And as frustrating as it's going to be for them, or maybe even for you, put them through it, right? And if I was introducing somebody to it, right, I would start with the shots coming from the area where I knew that I wanted them in that more upright, feet out of them position. Then do a drill where I knew I wanted them wider. And then the third part of that drill, okay, let's open it up. And now you're going to need to recognize when you need to be in each position. And I can help you through that, right? But I'm not in net. Like tomorrow night, the puck drops and there's 7 minutes left in the first period and a guy hits his situation. I'm in the press box. I can't help you. So you need to feel it. And you need to be your own best goalie coach, right? And, you know, I'll say it to the guys all the time, take charge of your development. It's on you to learn this. I can't just give you the answers all the time. I can put you in the scenarios to help you learn the feel. I can talk through it with you. But at the end of the day, you need to work on this and develop that feel and that's same for any scenario. This is just one example of something we might be working on.
I'm curious about scouting, Dan. Do you get involved in the scouting side of things at all? And what does that look like? So
my first 4 years was with the Blues. I did the amateur draft. We have since hired Brian Elliott, who takes care of that end of things. And I've kind of helicoptered in at the after our season's ended to, you know, just help him a little bit. But it's his baby. I learned so much from doing the amateur side of things. The people are wonderful. Getting to see the goalies at the events where there's a lot of pressure on them. See how they respond was great. Hearing the thoughts of other goalie guys that are doing what I'm doing. It's a pretty good community. Like we share our thoughts a lot, and they're good guys and good people. They're looking out for their own team's best interest, same as I am. But at the end of the day, you learn a lot, and it was really cool. I think watching a goalie who plays in the CHL and then going to watch a Minnesota high school game, and you have to compare those two goalies. One might be a year older than the other two, right? And then you somehow have to find a level playing field to evaluate them at. It was a really, really cool challenge for me. And the other thing that I found exciting was, okay, what is there that I can help this goalie with to give them more? And that was a question that I asked myself a lot through the scouting was, okay, like, let's say we take this guy. What would you do? And it was cool because then with some goalies, you're like, they're trained to the point already that there's not much I can really do. So they're going to still become a better version of themselves, but there's no big bang for your buck. And then you'd see a goalie where you're like, poof, if I just changed this one or two little things, this kid's going to go through the roof, right? Now, keeping in mind, usually you haven't met the kid when you're thinking this, so you have no idea how receptive he would be or anything. That comes more in the interview process. But yeah, doing the scouting things helped me a lot. It was really cool.
We've talked a little bit about the technical. We've talked a little bit about the tactical, but even watching the National Hockey League playoffs over the last little while, the mental side is huge at that level. It's not refined yet. How important is the mental side of the game, and how do you as a coach support your goaltenders with that?
Yeah, I think it's massive. Like if you look at as much as we go on about cookie cutter goalies, there's a lot of different ways to play this position. And a lot of guys in the NHL do it and do it really well. Mm-hmm. And that is mainly due to their mental strength and their ability to move from, one moment to the next, without the moment before affecting how they handle the next one. So my biggest message to the guys is that the only puck that matters is the next one that's coming your way. So if you have just made the best save in history, what's your job? Well, to stop the next puck. If you've just let in the worst goal in history, what's your job? Okay, it's the same thing. And the message that I send to the guys is you're equally dangerous to yourself in both those scenarios. So it's very important that you develop a routine that's 15 seconds or less that allows you to completely reset after a goal or after any stoppage. And then it's very important during the play that you are in the moment. And by being in the moment, that means you're trusting your training, you're reading and you're reacting and you're playing. We will work on the rest of the stuff in practice and in video, and your moment to play is just to show off all the stuff that you've worked on all week. So be in the moment, enjoy it, and play, and just play free.
The shot to shot piece that you're talking about, so important. But it makes me also think back to you talking about your experience coming into the Ontario Hockey League and feeling like you'd made it. I think that mental side of the game applies game to game as well. So instead of the next shot is the most important, like no matter what happens in the game tonight, the one that you just finished, what we have to do tomorrow is exactly the same thing. If you win, you got to keep working harder. If you lose, you got to work harder. It's gone. It's irrelevant. The next step is to work hard.
No, 100%. Or the next step is to rest. Right? Like today's athletes, all right, we take care of them a little bit better than we did 15 years ago even. Or certainly than when I played. And maybe the next step is to rest and understand that the rest is actually you better preparing for what's coming next than going out and banging your head against the wall over a bad game. And that takes some time for some goalies to learn, for sure. yeah, I think within game, between games, even within a practice, it's important that your memory's short. You're in the moment, and you just move on, right? And don't focus on the things that you can't control, and be where your feet are. And again, be a good person.
I love when you said that there's no one way to do this. I think that's what we love about the position so much. There is no absolutes in it. What about that 15-second reset? As much as there are probably no absolutes, and you've probably seen a whole bunch of different ways for goalies to have that moment where they reset, whether it's after a goal or after a huge save and a whistle. Any that you think you'd recommend to somebody who says, man, I don't have one of these 15 seconds routines. Dan, where should I start?
Yeah, I think you start out by, a sports psychologist can help you a lot with that. As well as ask yourself some questions, right? Like what would have me be able to get back to a calmer state faster? Or, if you're looking to do it on your own, what thoughts go through my head when that goal goes in? Then to each and every one of those thoughts, okay, is it fact? So if your immediate thought comes out, I'm terrible. Okay, well, are there any facts that support the fact that you're actually terrible? No. So you're not a terrorist. So scratch that one off, to stop doing that. Now, the sports psychologist can help them better to stop doing that than me just saying it. But let's say the next thing is the coach is going to pull me. Okay, well, what facts are there to support that? Right? Well, he pulled me that one time in wherever. Oh, okay. Like you let in, 4 goals in 2 minutes there, and he pulled you. Do you think that was right or wrong of him? Well, it was right. Okay. So that's not something to be worried about. He did that for you, not to you. And that would be my process. And then again, I would hand them off to the mental skills coach, right? But for me, I'm big on, this is your worry or your concern or what you're talking to yourself about. Give me some facts that actually show that that's true. And if you can do that, then we'll go from there. But generally, there are few to no facts that support their worries.
This is why we don't have goalie coaches in beer league, Dan, because I could point to a whole bunch of facts as to why I'm terrible.
You and me both. I play golf.
Oh, when that thought goes through the head. So on that note, I got to ask, because we kind of teased it at the beginning as we wind this down, I do need to know how exactly, while coaching in Connecticut after, almost 9 years after you finish your playing career in Canadian University, you ended up playing 2 games for the Hudson Valley Bears of the Eastern Professional Hockey League, a team that had a player coach many people may have heard of, some guy named Phil Esposito. There feels like there has to be a story there.
I think it was only 1 game that I actually played.
Okay, well, you need to talk to them because they've spread it out over 2. Maybe that was to lower the GAA.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I don't even look at that. But that's a funny story. So my friend Pete Alden and Tori Jacob were both playing on this team. And I played, I was coaching and playing men's league or whatever, right? Just having fun. And the team, I can't remember where it was based out of before, but then Hudson Valley, these guys all had to go in and start playing for them. They were mostly Connecticut and New York guys. And they needed a backup goalie for a game. So I was like, that's fine. Like, I will come. I am not going in. Right? Like, let's be clear. Not going in. And sure enough, I can't even remember what point of the game. It's like, all right, get in there. And I went in and made it very clear that I shouldn't have been in there. But it was fun. It was actually the day that that plane landed in the Hudson River.
Oh, wow.
So I was driving down to play because it was the Brooklyn Aviators. And they were based out of this rink that's like, it's a hangar. And I remember the traffic was vicious, and that was wow.
Wow. Tied to a moment in history there. Last one, you mentioned the junior C team. What leads you after all these years to want to own a junior C team in Port Hope?
Well, my wife went to a game. She brought our youngest stepson there, and she saw my father running the 50-50 table. And she saw like my mom's names up on the wall as somebody that's been on the foundations for refurbing the rink and accessibility committee and whatnot. My dad has like a bench outside with his name on it and everything. So she said, if this team ever comes up for sale, we're buying it. I was like, yeah.
Wow.
And then sure enough, it came up for sale. And what we learned very quickly was that we couldn't do it ourselves. So we were fortunate enough to have another couple, the Moores, come in and buy a bunch from us and relieve a bunch of our stress on it. But it's been great. And my oldest stepson's the goalie on the team. And my mom sells the tickets at the front desk. And my dad sells the 50-50. And my wife goes there every game night and takes care of everything as I'm not there.
Love it. I love it. So staying and so that's off-season home too. Still go back.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm in Bowmanville, which is about 15 minutes away from Port Hope. And that's the other part. Like if goalie guys are looking for advice out there, make sure you've got a supportive wife, because they need to be strong and they need to be supportive, because these roles will have you away from home, or back and forth if you're lucky, or away from home for the season. And you need to make sure that you have a wife that's going to be really supportive of that, which I do.
Well said. Well said. This has been great, Dan. There's so many,
Thank you, Dan.
My head is kind of spinning on all the takeaways in here. So much great advice, whether it's for parents, coaches, or young goalies, that I'm sure they are going to soak up.
Well, listen, I appreciate you guys having me on. I love the work that you guys do, as you know.
Well done, you guys. The cooperation and flow within a department, that was, I enjoyed that part.
There were so many, I almost don't even know where to start. Like I said, it's loaded. It's an hour-long interview plus the parent segment. And other than me making him go through his hockey DB early on, it's loaded with advice. Great stories about his hockey DB, especially one at the end there. Like after almost 10 years of coaching to somehow end up in the EPHL on a team that was coached by Esposito, but just loaded with, you can see why he's such a great coach, right? And if he so chooses, at some point he's getting an opportunity to coach in the National Hockey League as well, but doing such a great job with the Blues right now.
Yeah, and comfortable where he is in the game, right?
Be where your feet are.
Be where your feet are, another great one.
I think I'm going to put that on my wall to remind myself, because far too many times growing up, I was focused on what was coming next and not making the most of every opportunity. And I think that's great advice for all of us.
Forget growing up.
Well,
like now.
I think I'm a little better than I used to be, but
I'm not. I'm scattered all over the place. That's a good t-shirt. I have a running list of great t-shirt ideas, and that's another one. Be where your feet are. Author, Marin Mallard.
It's Marin Dallard.
Oh, I got that wrong, but he's the author.
Uh-oh.
I had an epiphany this week. RVH and being able to push off and slide out to get to the angle of a pass in front. So you try to cut down that angle of a pass in front. I finally figured out how to do it without really thinking. It was so much fun, and a lot of it has to do with different elements that we've talked about on this podcast, and it all came together, and I can kind of do it now.
What was the key to unlocking it for you? I got to ask.
Just being able to make sure I'm anchored on that post, but having the foresight that I can't just turn my shoulders forward and rely on stopping the puck there, that I actually have to push. I have to use my momentum to get out there. And it was great, but a lot of visual cues of watching guys do it. And then putting in a little bit of time, being a geek off to the side and try. And you know what I did? I did it on the sideboards, and just getting used to pushing against the boards and getting comfortable with that.
You've had an article with that?
Yes.
That is a great takeaway. That's that's from the old school magazine, Hutch, like the OG original. I think it was like a PDF format. We may need to pull that out and share it with people again, because folks, you don't need a net and everything to be perfect to learn how to push off your post.
No.
A goalie schools do it.
And I wasn't worried about pushing the net off or something like that. I did it like 10 times each leg and felt immediately more comfortable and then worked it into my game. So I just wanted to share that.
Good for you.
I'm still not any good, but it was still fun to be able to stop a couple of pucks and be in more ready position to cut down an angle.
Hutch, does that mean we can call that a pro drills? I mean, Darren sees pros. When we turn this little 2-minute talk,
we need some video of Darren. We need some video
into an article. We're calling it Pro Drills with Marin Dillard.
I guarantee they've got video in that practice rink. Come on,
Darren, get that. What is
live
that?
barn?
What is that? Live barn. Get me some live barn. To Darren off to the side, working on his RVH pushes off the sideboards. I need it.
I actually had one player skate by and go, "What are you doing?" I'm like, don't worry about it. You wouldn't understand.
You'll know it when you see it, buddy. Next time you think you got that open net back door on a pop pass and I'm in the reverse, you'll know what I'm doing.
Boom. Because I would just turn around and face and then it would go far side or I would get beat because I'm not cutting down an angle. And I think, I'm in a good spot. Why am I? And I got to push out. So there you go. Thought I'd share that.
Love it.
Be where your feet want to be. No, that wasn't it. Be where your feet are. That's
definitely not where they want to be.
And on the ice, get to where they need to be, Darren. That was what you were doing. You were getting your feet to where they needed to be, and then once they were there, you were fine.
You will get to where you need to be.
Or the RVH, be where your knees are.
Yes, very good. You guys have a great week.
You too, buddy. Thanks for this.
You guys are awesome. And thanks to Dan, Stewart, Cam as well over at the hockey shop, and to you, the listener, and continue to share your stories. We're getting so many great reactions coming in, and it's coming. Now we're going to do that all InGoal Radio listener show where we just bounce around with a bunch of different correspondences. Yes, it's in the head. We'll talk to you next time on InGoal Radio, the podcast presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. Tendy Fest is coming.